There's so much pressure whenever you try to go live, and then there's always like 10 minutes of being like, oh, is my sound okay?
Yeah,
Uh, it's just not necessary for my channel. I wouldn't have many live viewers anyway.
yeah,
It would be like, okay, now who wants to ask questions? And it's always like the same four people who just kind of say the same thing that you already talked to anyway. So I just,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
um,
got it. I got it.
but yeah, I apologize if my cat disrupts the feed or
Oh,
if there's
I'm gonna have a
crying in
couple
the
of cats.
background.
No, I got a couple of cats coming around, so yeah, it'll be all right.
Nice. Oh man, you got a solid background.
Yeah, no, yeah. So this is where I got all my comics. Just bought one of those IKEA. I don't know what those things are called. And then yeah, and I saw someone just kind of like just they just took like issues and just clipped it on the end of the boxes, and
Oh,
so that we
that's interesting. I need to do that.
yeah, it's
No,
really
yeah,
cool,
I
right?
have a
So
shelf, but it's like, oh man, my house is just so this like I'm literally this room that I'm in is like full of half storage of
yeah,
like stuff in the house and half storage of my own books, and then
yeah,
every other comic and graphic novel I've had for 10 years.
yeah.
And so it's just like, and one day, whenever I finally can settle down, it's like I'm gonna make this the cool room, where I get it
Yeah.
all set up like you've got it set up. But for now, it's just the black drape.
It's
Uh,
funny. It just adds up every Wednesday, you know?
yeah, like yeah, it'll never stop. Even as I like will clear a lot of it out, and I'll be like, all right, I'm done. I don't need any of that anymore. Then I just then my mind mentally is just like, so now I can get a whole new lot of every single Hellraiser that
Oh,
was ever made or something like that. It's
I
just like,
know. I know. My read pile, it's just like I try to put a dent in it and it's not happening at all. Like it's just like that thing's just growing. And it's funny, it's like I know I understand now why people don't get back to me with any reaction to my book because I know it's buried in the read pile, right? And it's and I'm okay with it. Right?
damn, yeah. I was gonna. I don't have like a set of questions set up for you. I just kind of have some things memorized that I was gonna get in at. But I want to ask, like,
Yeah.
what is your take on? So, do you have any other books besides Trakovi out now?
No, I won't have my next. No, Chicory is my first book, and then I'm almost done my I guess my next series, which is called The Sitter, and that's going to come out in April. I'm doing a Kickstarter with Lesser Known Comics.
Okay, I knew you had other things down the pipeline. I wasn't sure if like this is your first wave of stuff coming out.
Yeah, that is. But I got The Sitter, I got an anthology called S and a Few Tales, and then I have a Chicory spinoff that I'm doing, and then also I'm doing a Tick bootleg comic. So yeah, there's definitely stuff that's in the queue.
So you're like essentially if you kind of view someone's life in as they get into comic books and creating comic books, like it's like usually people start where it's like before they start creating, they read and collect. And if they aren't already into comics, reading, collecting comics, they are into movies or something like that and writing movies or
Mm,
something.
yeah.
So, but once you get past that, like phase one is like usually like your first 3 years of basically making your first like 1 to 3 comic books is like your first wave. And you usually
Mhm,
learn something from each book that you come out. And some people that first wave, they are all kickstarted or
mhm,
they're all on Webtoon, or they're a mixture between like one's with a publisher, one's kickstarted, some's online, or one
mhm,
they make and never release and things like that.
mhm,
And then the second wave is essentially people go one direction where they're just like, I didn't like my publisher outcome, so I'm just
mhm,
gonna go full blown Kickstarter. Or
mhm,
they were happy with it and they like essentially just level up career each time a bigger publisher and so on. I'm sort of in that second leading into third phase, I guess you could say.
mhm.
Um, but so I'm curious to see what's your take on essentially what your expectations were with Trakovi and what you're actually seeing right now.
Well, okay, so you know what? So I did the first two issues, and I did a Kickstarter, self-published. I had zero expectations. I think I had like at the time I had like I thought maybe I'd get 10 people to back it and then get a few $100, but I got like 146 backers and like 10 grand that I raised for that, right?
Just step
So that
one
was
out of the gate.
step
First
one out
book.
of the gate, boom, right? First, like my very first comic, right? And
Well done.
so yeah, thank you. And then and then literally like a month after the book, the Kickstarter finished and I sent it out. And then I had no aspirations of approaching a publisher at all. I thought I'll just do this on my own and just put out a book through Kickstarter, maybe do some markets in Edmonton and call it a day. But then I came across Molotov,
Okay.
and Molotov. I don't know. It's just like it's funny. It's like I started fanboying over that book because like for one, it was like Tom the Turner was doing it all, right? Like me, he was doing the everything, the writing, the artwork and all that. And I thought, okay, and then I kind of like I thought, well, maybe Scout is a home for this book, right? Because it's not drawn in a traditional fashion by no means. And I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. So I sent it, like I went to their submissions page and I filled it out. And I kind of half-assed it, I got to tell you. Like I didn't like it wasn't a formal kind of whatever. It was almost just an email. I just sent a link to the two books and a little bit of a blurb, and that was it. And then I left it for a couple of months, and I did a follow-up. And then Brendan Deneen is like, yeah, we're still thinking about it or whatever. We'll get back to you soon. And that went on for like another month. And then finally, like in January, he's like, yeah, let's go for it. And that was it. So yeah, it was kind of funny. It's like just good Kickstarter, and then all of a sudden, picked up by a publisher, and a couple months after that. And
Well, you have what I preach, which is a very unique art style, or just the whole book in itself is unique to itself. You're not going to find many books like yours. Like it's funny that you said Mullet Cop, because Mullet Cop, although that falls under a similar category as
Mhm.
far as art style, it is similar to other kind of Cartoon Networky looking styles. Yours is very much like it almost uh, it uh it has a true artistic style, almost as if like something you did by hand
Oh.
with like drawings and magazines. And I forget what you call that kind of style where it's like almost like a mashup of like you're taking clippings from things, and that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's I well because I collected comics like in high school. Like I was in there in the big late 80s, early 90s explosion, right? Like I was there, like we were all kind of experienced the McFarlane, Lee Field, whatever. And then I stopped collecting comics in like 92, 93, because I got a girlfriend. And
That ruins it. It ruins everything.
oh God, I missed out on so many good books. Anyway, and then I just got completely out of it. But I still maintained my art career, right? But I did everything I possibly could other than illustrating and comics. So I did like contemporary furniture design. I did collage work, both digital and paper. I did painting, some sculpture, everything imaginable. I was like avoiding comics, right? This whole time, but I always knew I was going to go do comics. I knew I was going to go back and doing comics. And then I started getting back into drawing. So I started doing like a series of sketches, and I was kind of teaching myself, right? When I first started drawing again, I was like drawing oven mitts for hands, right? And then as I kept going, all of a sudden the fingers showed up and the drawing got a little better, better, better. Yeah, and then I just got into it again. And I decided to do my own comic, right? And I think that's made to so with the art style and that, like it's been kind of polarizing. It's like people that dig it really dig it, and people that don't dig it really don't dig it. So it's and that's cool. It's fine, right?
No,
It's
I see that as a plus. That's kind of how
yeah.
people feel with Gabriel's art style.
Mm.
Is they either love it and he's a top 10 artist to them, or they hate it and they don't understand why anybody likes it,
Yeah, and
especially his coloring.
that's okay. You know what? And it's funny. It's like because it's funny. I collect comics, right? But it's funny. I always tell people I'm not a comic book guy. You know what I
Aside
mean?
for
It's like
the the thousands that I have.
So yeah. But it's funny. It's like I remember I was at an expo here in Edmonton, and this is actually right when I was starting to write the script for TRAKOVI 1, and this dude came up and he was checking out some prints, and then he kind of got into like this whole X-Men folklore conversation. And I just went completely blank. I didn't know what to. I couldn't reply back to him. I felt so bad. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, right. I just couldn't. I'm like the whole time. I'm just hoping to God he doesn't ask me for my opinion on something, right? You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
just
just
like
please
let him do
don't.
his thing. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So anyway, so I think like I said, I think that kind of gave me that avenue to just kind of do my own thing. And I was like, I was already like confident enough with the work I did, right? Because I've been critiqued before, like on like other artwork, you know. And so coming into this medium, it was like whatever. Like I was more than okay with it, and I knew I was gonna get, a few, you know, unresponsive
Some
whatever.
frowns.
Yeah, some frowns, right? But you know what? I'm telling you, man, there's a couple frowns that turned upside down, right? After they kind of got after I sent them preview copies for the rest of the series, right?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, because a lot of
I
people
think
like,
it's I like it a lot. It's like just the fact that it's so stylized is always interesting to me. It just it's gonna stick out no matter what's inside, you know?
yeah, and it's funny. It's funny it's coming from you because like obviously like your book with Scout, it eats what feeds it. Was like one of my big inspirations, like to start doing a comic, right? And because it's funny, I was coming right off the heels of Something's Killing the Children, and then I came across your book, and I thought, holy shit, man, Scout's got their own version. Like this could be their Something is Killing the Children, right? And then you
Yeah.
guys end. And then it ended at three. I'm like, ended at three. What?
So many people
What?
thought that. I feel so bad, like in hindsight, because and it's not for myself, but almost for Scout and anybody that was reading it, because that
Mhm.
opening issue, it dives you into something that everybody wanted to be like, what is this world? I'm ready to write it for a long
Yeah,
time. And they
yeah.
and then we just cut them so short. And Scout was like, people are loving it. Do you have more? And I'm like,
Yeah,
we do,
yeah.
but it was crazy because, and this is what I'll get into with you, is like from the get-go, like I was saying, is everything is in waves. And what
Mhm,
people don't understand is, when I say people, I mean readers who aren't creators, is that this
mhm.
is just like anything else where it takes years of time and thousands of dollars to make these things.
Yeah.
And when it's your first book, or essentially this was the first thing that we put a lot of effort into. There's many years where I was writing shorts, making webtoons, doing my own artwork, which was terrible. And you kind of like dip your toes in, and It Eats What Feeds It was the first like dive in deep. I'm gonna work with a very exceptional artist. I'm gonna
Mhm,
fine tune the script, and you have to really research like, how much can I afford? Would I rather
mhm,
do something kind of half-assed but long and do it online through Webtoon, or do I want to do something really high quality
mhm,
to really make a splash, but I'll make it short? And that was what
mhm,
we went with. And while that one was being made, we were already in the works of what's going to be our next one. And as
mhm.
you're now seeing in comics, is same with readers, is now once you spent a year creating it, you now are basically a year in the like pocket, as you basically are soliciting, trying to get pre-sales, and then
Mhm.
your book's out, and then you're trying to hype it up while it's out and while it's live, like the week of, and then
Yeah,
you might get a second wave that then turns into a longer wave, and then you get delays and printer delays, and like I had to deal with like the COVID
yeah,
happening, and so now all of
yeah,
a sudden you're like a year in.
yeah,
They're just now seeing it, but the book's been done and sent to the printers for 8
yeah,
months. And I'm
yeah,
trying to work on my next thing, because once it starts to get momentum, people are wanting to
mhm,
know, what do you have next?
yeah,
And instead of going into making that one a longer story, we started another project. And
mhm,
because the success of It Eats happened, we decided to make our second project the longer one for people to dive into, for people to
mhm.
like, once they're in for the long haul.
Yeah. Is that
Um,
Liquid Kill?
That's Liquid Kill,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
that one is ultimately going to be the to finish the full arc will be 15 issues, basically three
yeah,
volumes, which is basically 3 years worth of work. Uh,
yeah,
and then that means, you know, almost you're looking at half a decade before by the time the first like production starts and the reader reads the last issue is
yeah,
like that long of a time frame, and a lot can happen in between there, you know. And
yeah,
then we've got other books that you're just like, so you're working on. And so like you're kind of always in this in between world, and it's everything's
mhm,
just like rushing to slow down to, and you never really know where you're at. Which brings
yeah,
me to you, which is so after the success with the Kickstarter, and
mhm.
then they decide, how long of a gap was it whenever they like accepted the book before your book actually released? Did you have to deal with the paper shortages or whatever?
No, no, not at all, actually. So I had basically like I had a full year plus until the book released. So I had a
Yeah, that's a
lot of time.
while. Yeah.
So I had a lot of time, and so that gave me the opportunity to well, you know, they hooked me up with Andrea like Molinari,
Yeah, I saw
you know,
that he was an
from an
editor.
editor. Yeah, the guy's awesome, right? So
Yeah, yeah, I like him.
I learned so much from him. You know, so we went through issues 1 and 2, which is already done, and we just dicked around with it and re-edited it and just fixed it up. And then it gave me just time just to jump into issue 3. You know, 3, 4, and 5 just kind of went like bang, 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 you know. And yeah, so I had lots of time. I had lots of time. I think I probably missed out on the height of, I feel like there was like a bit of a height a couple years ago, you know, with comic sales and that.
Yeah, that's what
So
I've been hearing.
yeah.
Because man, it's so hard to see the whole big picture,
Mhm.
because things happen so quick, and yet we're seeing things over like such a long time span. And then whenever you're actually like hyping it, it's 6 weeks or whatever. You know, it's like it's just like a Kickstarter. People,
Yeah.
those that a Kickstarter campaign might be live
Yeah.
for 3 weeks, but you're
Yeah.
planning that for months at a time, and
Hmm.
then you're just like super hyping it, super hyping it. It's the same in the direct market too, in that
Yeah.
when it finally is like in previews world, you're still trying having to hustle just as hard. What all did you do to try to build momentum for the book? And did you
Man,
see any tangible results, both at the
yeah.
Kickstarter and with Scout?
Absolutely. So really, it all started with like the first, you know, the first idea of the book, right? Like you know, the first scribbles, I just started posting it. So like I just did basically just progress shots on my social media, especially on my Instagram, really every day, you know, just every step. I was giving out to like, you know, to whoever was following me, like friends, families, and strangers and whatnot. And then they're watching this book progress, and you know, and that helps because it almost gives the viewer a bit of ownership, you know, when they see something, you know, from the first few scribbles, you know, to like full pages being done and stuff like that. So by the time the Kickstarter hit, I mean, people were excited because, you know, they've seen this birthing process, you know, that took almost 2 years really for these 2 books, because it was my very first time doing a comic, and you know, I'm going through all these how to's and, you know, and trying to find the right way to do a book. And you know, and I would just like, it was almost like an old school blog, you know. I would just kind of talk about my trials and tribulations of trying to figure out how to do things, you know, like, you know, I would talk about, you know, figuring out how to letter, and you know, what kind of coloring should I do, and you know, how do I make my ink work not look as bad as it really is. And you know, so I was really open. I was in constant communication with people. That's really what it was. And along the ways, I would just, you know, I would just mash up, do a bunch of little promos in that. Like I had my own little label called Three Press Comics. So I would take like old photographs from my you know, from my grandparents and that, and just kind of like, you know, draw like the characters' heads on top of them and things like that.
I saw, yeah, you
And
had great promos. I remember thinking like, oh yeah, he must do this. Which were so are you is your like main traditional job as an artist?
no, no, art's always been, it's always been after hours. Like I got a day job,
Okay.
um, you know, which pays the bills. And I never tried to make art as my main career because I just know it's just not going to happen, right? And I
Yeah,
got
and
kids, I got
it can ruin your love for the art. You hear two sides where people say to make your passion your job ruins your
Mhm.
passion because you turn it into work, and then people will
Yeah.
say you're not going to love your job unless it's your passion. So it's like I am
Mhm.
sort of in between to where it's like I think it's easier if you the ultimate goal I would see it as because I'm the same way. I've been managing hotels for like my main career for over a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like ultimately, I feel the best between both worlds is to just have a very uh brain like not too difficult of like a day job that just can pay the bills and then
Yeah.
allows me to go to cons on weekends and
Mhm.
I'm not working more than 8 hours a day. It's be ultimate to be have like a
Yeah.
part-time solid job and then
Yeah.
an artist after that. Because then you're
Yeah.
basically not having to like hustle your art. That's the thing with when you're a full-time artist, especially in this career, everyone I know that does it, it's a
Mhm.
constant grind, even if you are
Oh,
selling well. It's like
yeah.
you have to make really high numbers to make what would be a, a, an average salary in any other field where it's easy to just, show up to work on time and they give you
Yeah.
20 an hour or whatever, as opposed to trying to make the same writing comics is like you have to constantly be writing and then trying to find your next gig every
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a dream, but it's a grind, like even
Yeah.
whenever you're doing well. And then if you're not doing well, you're just not making ends meet. And then you're basically overworking yourself because you're trying to
Yeah.
supplement with a part-time day job and then
Mhm.
trying to, book gigs at the same time. And you just overworking yourself and still not making much.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I feel for because I see on Twitter X whatever all the time. A lot of a lot of people that are like trying to make it go full time. Man, they're struggling hard. And they're just like they're out there just begging for work and seeing if anybody has any cover artwork and stuff like that. I really feel for them. I really do. Like it's pretty admirable that they try to make a go of it, full time. But
Yeah.
I know for myself, I just couldn't, and the nice thing about having a 9 to 5 or Monday to Friday is like it gives you a bit of a break from the artistic stuff, right? So you can kind of sort of switch off for a bit, and also kind of it gives you time to kind of like think a bit as well, step back from your project, and then you can kind of process some thoughts during the day, and then hopefully you got enough energy, when you come home after supper to like knock out a couple of things. But I've always been okay with that. I'm okay not being a full time.
Yeah,
You know,
it's never bothered me, but it's one of the main things you see when someone says like, "I won't feel as if I made it until I'm full time," and I'm always like, it's
oh,
way
man.
easier to not worry about that.
What
It
is it
does
like?
it's a lot of work, but
Yeah, somebody asked that question too. They posted on Twitter there or whatever, and just said like, how do you know you've made it in comics? And it was really interesting. It's like, obviously the first thing people say is you get picked up by a publisher. I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, well, I get picked up by a publisher, but you're the last one that gets paid, if you'll get paid, right? Kind of thing. And
yeah,
and it's like, is it getting options? Is that a thing, right? You get option, there's no guarantee that it's going to go anywhere, right? It's option, but that's maybe as far as it's going to go. And
yeah.
and I don't know. And then maybe just completing a book, right?
I
That one book.
I saw when people post that question a lot, but
Mhm.
I never chime in. But how I feel, I'll answer now. It
Mhm.
is not necessarily just how do you know when you made it, but I will say this is that whenever I started in just writing in general and specifically trying to get into comics and in film, I did both at the same time. I started
Yeah.
screenwriting and writing comics essentially in the same year in 2016, 2017.
Mhm.
And I set a few goals for myself, and they were pretty high level goals. It was like find an agent, get a publisher, sell or option a script,
Mhm.
produce a movie, kind of all these, get on a, talk to A-list celebrities kind of thing. I've
Yeah.
broken every single one of those barriers.
Yeah.
And I never really felt like, oh, I made it. Because I think
Yeah.
that each time what you learn through this process of actually going through all these motions is before you start, you have this vision that there's like a moment when it all comes together and
Mhm.
everything just like makes sense. And there are like blips of like, oh man, I have this crazy call with someone that's coming up, and like it could go, and you're always at this level to where you're like, if this happens, my whole career changes or something like that.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
realize that in reality, everything is so delayed, and
Mhm.
everything is built upon, everybody is hyping up somebody else's dream that is
Mhm.
never fully solved until other people, it's almost like nothing comes true until it's already happened. It's kind of the same with people like lucid dreaming, in that if you focus too hard on trying to make something real, the image becomes distorted. You almost just have to like let it happen. And by the time you realize that your dreams came true, you're just like in the dream enjoying it. You don't even realize that you've like accomplished everything that you set out to do. And that's what
Yeah.
I've seen through this, is that the a lot of the big goals that you set, they those aren't the goals that actually make things change. Like
Mhm.
what really people, what you think is that if I get an agent, I will then be able to get some kind of deal or money, and then when you get the deal you realize the money's not always there, and then when you get the money you realize it comes in delayed payments to where it doesn't actually, it's not life changing. And
Yeah.
then and it's like the real life changing things that happen, by the time you see them in fruition, you're already another level through your career. You're almost like,
Yeah.
it's like that happened, like you'll see that with even the big time creators, where you're like, oh, this person's living the life, they have comic
Mm.
books, they're traveling, they have movies in development. They wrote
Mhm.
that book 12 years ago,
Mhm.
and that was or something like that, to where it's just like everything's decades behind. It's not just like a few months. It's like the real
Yeah.
things are, you're working in giant waves of time frames, but of like I was saying, you're in wave 1. It's
Yeah.
usually by the time we get to wave 6 before we start to really see tangible results when or something.
Yeah, it's
That's
funny you
my
say that.
take. Is the key thing
It's
is like
so
it's all a dream. It's never, as they say in movies, it's never real until it's real. Everyone will
yeah.
like, you'll get everything on board. They say the thing project is greenlit,
Mhm.
but until that money is in your account, and even then,
Yeah.
you're not, like it's not real yet. And like that's why everything's delayed. You could hire people, have everything set up, dates, and then be like, oh, but they pulled.
Yeah, I've had conversations with guys at expos too, where they said, this one guy at Amazon picked up their book for development, and it went through a couple stages, and each stage brought in a bigger check, at the end of the year, and then it got to the point where Amazon's like, no, we're done, we're not going to do anything with it. So there's
It's
your
just like
risk.
anything else. It's just like, because things are so long,
Yeah.
it'll just be like, oh, that person isn't there anymore. That the person
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
brokered that deal, he
Mhm.
moved to a different department and someone else took over, and he canceled everything. And you're just like, what? Like I
It's
spent years back and forth of this kind of thing, and I'll
mhm.
even I'm still friends with people that
Mhm.
ghosted me, or I say friends, like I've had producers straight up just like, it's like a week away from production. They know that I'm just like on pins and needles, like this is
Yeah,
crazy. Here we go, and then nothing.
they're
Ghosted.
gone.
Year and a half
Yeah.
goes by. And then they reach back out and ask about the next project, and I'm just like, do you not remember what happened with the last one? And they're like, oh, did I not?
Yeah.
It's just like, what? Like how? And but like, you just, you can't hold grudges, I guess, and when you're
No.
dealing with so much, because I've been on the other end at the same time, is you could have so much going on and talking, and then like just something comes up to where you're just like, I have to pull funding to do this other thing or whatever, or I
Yeah.
just don't have the funds to continue that project anymore. Something had
Mhm.
to go, but you at least try to communicate. It's crazy that people will just straight up just stop.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny with this whole comic thing, I'm not gonna lie, I had, these kind of sort of like daydream kind of ideas. What it would be like to, be picked up by a publisher, right? Big or small press, right? And so now it's like, I'm well into it. I've gotten the paperwork. You know, I got my first royalty statement for the direct for the direct market, and I'm just like, I wrote back, I'm like, well, welcome to comics, and I was
Yeah.
just, I just,
Okay.
and the reply back was like, it's a long game. These are just the direct sale. We still got this coming back with this whole where. I'm like, okay, whatever, right? I was just like, I had a moment of like, what am I doing, right? But then
Yeah.
it's like, but then you kind of sort of like, you do realize it is a long game with this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to make, Wildcats and sell a million copies kind of thing, right? And you get humbled really quick, and you kind of, and you realize too, it's like, it's just you. It really is at the end of the day, it's just you that has to push this book and, sell yourself as much as you can. Like the publisher will do whatever they do, but it's like, you know, your book comes out this week. By next week, there's going to be 100 books on top of your book, right? People are going to
Mm.
forget about it. And so I've kind of, like I said, I've kind of sort of, settled down a bit, and I'm just kind of just letting things play out as they play out, focusing on the next book, the next Kickstarter, and then see how it goes. Like I don't, I'm kind of like sort of like, if anything happens, I'll be surprised. I'll be pleasantly surprised, right? But I'm not expecting a windfall or anything crazy in that, because I understand the landscape. Especially with small press publishers, it's not it's tight. It's tight. It's tough, and then getting people to like your book, right? To like a brand new book, like you're in constant competition, really, with other
Yeah, yeah,
creators
it's
for other
it's a
books. That's what it
cutthroat
is.
thing. Yeah, you're
It is,
constantly
right?
trying
Hmm.
to as I've yeah, that's what I my goal of the channel is, A, to help people, but also showcase what no one else is telling you, is that
Hmm.
independent comics is just like independent music. It's just like virtually any other
Yeah.
creative field, where
Yeah.
making a career at it is very tough because you're going at it after a very relatively small market
Hmm.
and with a lot of competition, because a lot of people want to get into it, and only the very best or very peculiar rise to the top. And
Yeah.
and everybody else is just not making it or barely making it. And and then, like, when it comes to publishers, it's like, I'm trying to you don't realize how much it costs for them to publish it.
Hmm.
And how little the publishers actually do when it comes to, it's like all they have in reality is the funds to print it and
Hmm.
the audience that reads, that basically respects their brand. But even those that
Hmm.
respect their brand, especially someone like Scout, they put out a lot of books,
They do.
and
Yeah.
not everybody reads everything. Even they
Hmm.
pick and choose, but amongst the good ones.
Hmm.
And so to stand out just amongst that crowd is tough. Much less
Yeah.
then you have to, Scout is competing with all the other indie house labels.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
their audience is essentially the same as Scout's audience. It's not like they're
Hmm.
each a different pool that you can branch into. The only
Yeah.
real way to break out of that pool is to somehow get coverage from a more mainstream comic commentators, like either people on Twitter or people on like review sites and things like that. Or if someone like, which is my question for you, is like, what outside of comics, like what would you say is like the subculture or genre people that you could capture? Because obviously it's like Slaw, the Slav with no remorse. Like you could go after
Hmm.
sort of the Slovenian community or
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
like that. But
Hmm.
yours is also more in, I would say, kind of the hardcore or almost like punk rock uh
Hmm.
crowd to, or not, I'm trying to think, is like the more extreme, like people that are into more extreme stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's like
Skateboarding
uh
maybe, yeah, it's like,
yeah, yeah. But that's what I grew up on though, right? Like I grew up like, junior high and high school, like in the 80s, and in high school in the early 90s, right? Like I love love the punk genre, you know, and I love skateboarding too. I skateboard a little bit, but not a lot. Like,
Oh
but
yeah, I can
I
tell by
always,
the Toy Machine shirt that
yeah, yeah.
skateboarding
So
is
yeah,
somehow involved in your life.
but you know what it was with the skateboarding community. Like I said, I wasn't like an avid rider, but it was just the artwork that was associated with the
Yeah,
skateboarding culture. Like I love the all, and with punk rock as well. I love the DIY vibe. You know, I just loved how it's like if you can kind of muster up a drawing of someone, you're good to go. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to go through like 4 years of art school, right? It's like if we can tell it's some if it's a person, great. Is it's a dog? Good. Let's go with it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and like it was funny. It's like that DIY vibe just kind of just gave confidence, right? And so yeah, maybe I should have gone to school for art. I don't know. Maybe I would have been, you know, doing a lot better. But
I went to school
um
for art and I suck at it. I mean, I went to school for a few things because I'm a
ah
wacky person. I went backwards in my life. I did
yeah,
everything backwards, but
yeah. But I find for me
I
though, yeah,
anyway, you go
go.
ahead.
Well, you're talking about like, you know, like what kind of like, you know, outside of comics, who I can, you
Yeah,
know, whatever. So like by having like in TRAKOVI, by having like my hometown of Edmonton, you know,
that's
as
Canada, right?
yeah, yeah, we're in Alberta, yeah, Canada.
Okay.
So by having Edmonton as my backdrop, you know, and name dropping, you know, like certain neighborhoods and certain places of business, right? Like the places of business you see in the series are actual places. And so by doing that, I mean, even within my own city, like I mean, you know, the Edmonton Journal, which is our local paper, they did an article on this, right? CBC, you know, they you know did an interview, you know, like a television interview in regards to it. So like I, you know, so I got like, you know, people within in Edmonton who are normally comic book creators to, or sorry, comic book readers and buyers to actually interest, you know, show interest in a comic book.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, gosh, I don't know. I always tell like I've had a couple people ask me like, you know, what do I do kind of thing, right? As if I can really give them the magic answer, right? All I say is just do your thing. Just do what you do. Do what you're comfortable with, right? You
Yeah.
know, like it's like how do you make a comic? Well, make it how it's more comfortable for you, right? Because when I started, like I was looking up, I was reading things like, you know, this one guy had a theory of like, you know, well, you have to start off with a splash page and then you have to have 4 panels on page 2. Page 3 has to be this many panels, you right? And it's like there had to be so many panels, you know, it's like odd, even odd. It was like this formula. I was like, holy shit, like I don't know if I can do this, right? And then it's like, you know, I gotta get a blue pencil. I gotta first draw the blue pencil. I gotta get this like big, you know, the big pad of paper, you know, for the full pages and stuff like that. And that drove me bonkers, and that wasted so much of my time. And then eventually, when I figured out, it's like I don't need to do what they do, right? I'm an indie guy. I don't need to like whatever. And then, man, it's like as soon as I just did what I was comfortable with, it expedited fast. And then I can do my own thing. And then people picked up on what that own thing was.
I ultimately that's what I try to suggest to everybody is do what you I do what you feel is what you want. Your vision. Think about that, even if it's strange or weird, before you try to follow somebody's step-by-step method when it comes to something as detailed as panels and pages.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to mimic something that you've seen,
Mm-hmm.
just then try to reverse engineer it. That's where I suggest it's like
Yes.
if you have a great story, tell the story you want to tell. And then if you
Mhm,
want to figure out how to structure it or format it correctly in a way that
mhm.
people will buy, well then buy Watchmen or buy the books that you like and look at how they did it.
Yeah.
And then that's where you mimic like not necessarily how many panels are on a page, but what's
Yeah.
on the first page. And you know, and then look at some other ones. They don't all start with splashes, you know, like that like and then
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like but ultimately how did you that's the thing with me is I see everything in my head very much before it ever goes on paper. And especially the
Yeah.
first page or the
Yeah.
first scene or the first I like have that it like that's what inspired me. Like I see that scene, and I know what that's going to look like. Like that's going to be the first page is this
Yeah.
line that someone's saying as they're doing this, and it is often like a hard opening. So it's like
Mhm,
as you can see, like with It Eats What Feeds It, I knew the
mhm,
very opening page was going to be a newspaper ad.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have to look at how some other book was written to do that. Now,
Mhm,
after that, whenever it came to scripting, I did look at other things to figure out the pacing.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's like ultimately point being is do what you feel is in your vision first and focus on, because that's what ultimately people care about. They care about your unique vision. People don't like copy and pasted stories unless you're going after a very specific, I'm making a shark genre thing. That's when people
Yeah.
care. The shark's got to eat people or whatever. But if you have some vision about a shark that's swallowing universes or something like that,
Yeah.
tell that story, because that's what people are going to be interested in, is that weird story.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with like looking at other people's work, right? And then, like you said, reverse engineering. It's funny you mention that because, like, so on Netflix right now, there's that Sylvester Stallone documentary, Sly, and it's really interesting. So he basically talks about he starts off talking about his early days when he's obviously trying to get work as an actor in the '70s, but he was focusing more on writing, right? And it's funny, especially Stallone. I always like look at him more so as a writer, and he was saying how like he would go to the movie theater and with a tape recorder and he would just record the dialogue. He'd come home and then he listened to the dialogue, whatever, and he put his own words to it. Right. So he would change up the dialogue, but he would have the format in front of him. Right. So that's how
Yeah, that's
he
a good
taught
way to do it.
himself to read, right? Or to read, well, maybe to read,
To
but
write,
to write.
or
Yeah,
both,
to
maybe
write.
both.
But anyway, it was just really cool just to see that process, right? And that just again shows that he didn't read up on a formula, or a how to. He just kind of sort of figured out his way of doing it, and then he just taught himself, and then eventually got to the point where he said in a couple of years he knocked out like 15 screenplays, and eventually it led to Rocky, and so that was kind of inspiring, like to see, right? And it was funny. It's one of those things I really wish I would have seen when I was starting to script for the first time. You know what I mean? Because I would have felt more relaxed, and because that was the other thing too. Man, I spent so much time looking up samples of scripts, how to format a script. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how to lay it out. But then eventually you realize, like, well, I'm drawing it. I'm the one who's
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like,
so it's like,
with
what am
you,
I doing here?
it's yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to explain to anybody, right? And so then that right away just kind of washes that away, right? But now I find like I do write a formal script, because I find it's easy when it's time for lettering. I just kind of copy paste and then, plunk it onto the page after. But yeah, no, I always tell people just do you, draw how you want to draw. I mean, you could try to mimic somebody from the big two, or I mean, there's so many good illustrators out right now. It's crazy. I mean, you could
Oh, when it
try.
when it comes to artwork,
Mhm.
I definitely, even more than writing, do your own thing. Uh,
Yeah.
there's so many. It To me, it never works when you try to mimic someone else's style, because this what makes
Oh,
somebody else's style cool is like they have the gift. You can't mimic it.
no, and I know my limits, and I know my patience, and I know how much effort I want to put into something, right? And like I can appreciate some of this stuff, right? I really do, but I'm not going to try to chase it, right? So that's
Yeah.
why sometimes I'll come across like indie book, and kind of flipping through it, and you see they're chasing it. They're trying to do that big two illustration,
Yeah.
whatever, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just like that just throws me off right away because there's no uniqueness to it. I know what they're trying to get to, and I hope they get to that point. If that's their goal, I hoped, great, good on them. But yeah, I prefer something quirky, and quirky now that there's like confidence in it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's not just comics either. It's with anything else. It's the same with mimicking other musicians and DJs and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that you can, I guess, when you're very beginning, it's like it's different whenever you're learning like how to create, as opposed to trying to do that because you're following a trend. or
Hmm.
whatever. And
Yeah.
it's in every single thing, whether it's investing or comics, trying to capture a trend whenever it's hot. By the time you're mimicking it, that trend is over. You know,
Yeah,
like
it is. It is.
it's just
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time. That's just
Yeah.
what's going to happen. You have to, what you almost need to do is just do what you want to do. And if now's not the time when that's hot, just hold on to it and just
Yeah.
wait until, because eventually everything goes in like back and forth waves to where what's hot 3 weeks from now or 3 years from now, um,
Yeah.
it will hit again another 3 years after that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I have to capture my cat real fast. He's being crazy. Sorry, I'm back. Um, what all did you want to cover before we go? We got like another 15 minutes before I have to get
So I
back
look
to
forward to
the
like,
kids.
I'm looking forward to like 10 years down the road when like, someone's gonna find my book in a dollar bin and go, holy shit, what happened to that guy? It's a cool book, I'm kind of waiting for that, right? They'll track me down. I'm just like some old curmudgeon and I'm like, I don't want to talk
That
about it.
it will happen, I'm sure, because the people that are really into this space, the readers that are don't care about creators or anything like that,
Mhm.
or maybe they do want to eventually become a creator. It's usually people that are younger or people that have been collecting for a long time. They're
Mhm.
really into it, and
Yeah.
you are a rock star to them. That's what I've learned in the funnest part of this space is
Mhm.
realizing how cool you are to just a small portion of the world.
It's funny you mention that because when House of Nerd out of Toronto, he Serge runs it, and so he messages me. He goes, yeah, I'm gonna, you want to be on the show? I got like Tom Latern's gonna be on it. Molotov. I'm like, what? Yes, I want to be on with Tom Latern from Molotov.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, it was funny. I was just like, I even like Ron, right? I go, Tom, I'm fanboying right now so hard, right? And I just like, that's how it is, right? I mean, you just have, you know, it's
Yeah,
just
I'm the
funny.
same way that the other people in the space like you, it's you forget that, oh, this person, I'm paying attention to you
Mhm.
and it's just like, so if I'm paying attention to you, other people are as well.
Yeah, it is funny. It really is. It's like I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe there's someone out there who'd be excited to meet me on one day. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I try to
Which
be nice.
I was going to get into what are your, so aside from your next book, so like for me, for example, I've learned now that your sales come in kind of three different waves. It's essentially, and what it's the same with movies too, but your first real expectations are with the first launch, whether that's your Kickstarter or
Mhm.
in comic shops. But that's only wave one.
Yeah.
Wave two is then essentially exclusives, which is once the book is out to general public, you then want to try to sell kind of rare editions and
Hmm.
things that you can sell for a higher than retail price on
Hmm.
your own or at Comic Cons.
Yeah.
And that is where or on like Scout's website or your own website.
Hmm.
And I was gonna let you know is like I would take advantage of the publishers give you a deal on the books that
Hmm.
they've already bought that are printed.
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
Take
I've
advantage
done
of
that. Yeah.
that because once they're gone,
Hmm.
trying to print that book on your own is not going to be as cheap as when they printed 1,000 of them or whatever they
No.
printed.
Yeah.
So and then then there's like three different ways after, like once you have your own physical books that you can sell at Comic Cons or on your own
Hmm.
website, or like you can sort of lead people to the publisher's website or whatever like that. So your initial wave is done.
Hmm.
Now you can go to each different pool. That's when you go to your local markets, your local selling at local
Yeah.
bookstores, grocery stores, whatever, going on the
Yeah.
weekends, going to your church or whatever it is, going to skate parks, going to
Yeah.
music festivals, going to farmers markets, going to
Yeah.
obviously Comic Cons and things like that.
Hmm.
And I was gonna see what plans down the pipeline do you have in sort of that second wave and what's something new that you may be doing that I haven't heard of or tried before?
Well, obviously, I'm starting to do markets and shows, right? So I already did a couple here in Edmonton, and nice thing with Scout, which is cool, is like they send you comps, right, with
Yeah.
each cover, right, which is great, right? 20 copies of each cover, and then you can buy, books at 50% off, right, which is fantastic, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I did that. I got my comps and I bought I bought my half off whatever of every cover. I'm gonna do it for all 5 issues. And so now it's like now I know it's me that I got to start pushing, whatever. So I've done, like I said, a couple of like pop culture shows here in Edmonton. I'm going to do another market next week called the Royal Bison, and then there's the Calgary Expo next year, and then there's the Edmonton Expo next year, and then we'll kind of see after that. So basically, whatever little shows pop up, I'm going to just say yes to and just do it, and just like even if I got to sell a trunk of my car, you know,
Yeah.
I'll it's like a band, right? The album's out, now you got to tour it,
Yeah, exactly. That's how I
and
say it.
that's really all it is, right? You just got to get out there, and then I'm going to be promoting as much as I can, like just doing little ads for myself, and just market. You got to push yourself. Like that's all I can do right now. It's just market myself as much as I can, and then try to get in front of people as much as I can. Because I know I do have people that, like, I know here, like I was at the Edmonton Pop Culture Fair, and I had people show up just to get their stuff signed, which was kind of cool. So I
Yeah.
want to try to like build off of that, right? Get people more excited for the next issue, and and the books after that. So it's just, yeah, it's touring. Now we're touring. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome. I guess I was just gonna wrap up. I was gonna say I see sort of two different directions that I see creators go when
Mm,
they reach sort of as they're in level one and moving into level two,
mm,
is they get so burnt out on level one that they just sort of give up. Or
yeah.
it's like I just want to let you know, like, stay in the game because you have such a unique style and brand, and since you're both an artist and
Mm,
a writer, you have all the steps in place to just continue succeeding. And you're a perfect example of someone that if you just stay steady and stay to your visions, you
mm.
will continue to build your audience base. And
Yeah, I hope so.
that like it, and you're just still in the beginning phases because I'll see so many that like they spend the first 3 years that they're almost like burnt out, and they're just like, I don't want to tour anymore.
Yeah.
I made $100 at my last con and I spent 300 on the table, and they're just
Yeah, I
like,
know.
and it's like I feel that pain. I know it.
Yeah.
But those creators also don't have as strong of like a style as you do. Like you have a very stylized, you're a stylized, unique creator. Like people, I feel like, will see your name and associate
Mm,
it with not just TRAKOVI, but anything else you have going down the line because of your art style and the uniqueness of your stories. And as
mm.
long as you stay in that path and don't stray or start saying some kind of political outburst, no one's, or something like that, people will
Yeah,
continue
no.
to follow you.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like, just stay the course. In 10 years, then you can debate whether or not you want to throw in the towel or not. But after a few years, it's like I want to keep continuing urging
Mm.
people to not give it, because right now I'm seeing people on Twitter being like, should I just give up or
Oh
whatever?
man,
And
this last
it's
week
over
alone.
and over and over again, and especially after the whole comics broke me thing that happened however many months ago
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah.
It's like you're and yes, comics especially indie comics are a grind. They are in a downturn. But
Yeah.
if you just see it for what it is, and I don't know, it's like, just if tell you this, the whole point of this is to tell the stories that are in our heads and just not
Hmm.
have them go to waste. And
Yeah.
then just grow from there. And
Mm,
it's just a shame to see so many struggling and then just kind of refusing to care beyond that, because I know it's a tough grind, and it's like, of course you need time and money and
Yeah.
persistence and unfortunately that's just anything you do though. It doesn't matter if you're trying to get good at chess or if you're
Yeah.
trying to it's just like, and unfortunately this hobby is, it's just like music. I started like at in my true youth, I guess you could say. I was like into making movies, and and
Yeah.
whenever you're making movies, the first way to make money is like filming skateboarders. Those were the people that actually like wanted you to, even if you didn't get paid, they were always down to have someone film them, and so I got
Yeah.
in with that crowd, and then I sort of got into that crowd's also into music, and I started making music, and
Yeah.
but all those careers, all these like creative, the actual like community of people making it is
Hmm.
the difference between us and the indie level and mainstream is very few and far between.
Hmm.
But what's cool about it, as I've explained even like earlier in this podcast, is the fan base is still the same though.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
view the indies often just as high level as the mainstream
Hmm.
creators when they're talented and unique and stylized. And that's the thing. If you can just stay at it, and not expect the just to become a rock star overnight, it's
Yeah.
worth it, in the long run.
And I think I wonder if that's maybe what really like deters people from continuing is maybe they expected this instant gratification, in a short amount of time. Like I don't know what I don't know what they expect, right? Like a big paycheck or a parade. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, some people just may just they want the world, in a couple of days kind of thing. But yeah, I find for me it's like I know I'm lucky because I don't have to rely on other people, right? I don't have to rely on an artist or another writer or a colorist or letter. That I can just I'm all self-contained, right? I'll get someone to do a variant cover. That's about it now, and then an editor. So I'm lucky that way. But I find for me it's like I think now it's like the money is money, whatever. I know I'm not going to make whatever off this, but I think I'm more excited and curious as to what the next story is going to be. I think that's kind of where my head is now. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm just I don't know what it is. I'm just kind of like curious, like what's going to be the next thing I'm gonna tell, right? Like with this book, The Sitter, that I got coming in April. It's like I got the ending in my head. I'm just looking forward to seeing how I'm going to draw the last page, and then how I'm going to color the last page. It's just I don't know. It's just I'm excited about the future, I guess, right? Enough that I just want to keep going, and then surprise myself along the way. And if people want to stick with whatever I put out, then that's great as well. So I hope they do, but you never know.
Yeah. No, yeah, that you got everything going for you, I think. And yeah, I guess yeah, where can people find your work? What's the main? Do you have a website? Do you
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like
So
that?
so I got my artist website, which is thinkitem.com. So you can see my work all the way back to like 2003. So you can see you can see the steps to where I am now. And I don't have like books or anything on sale right now. And
But
I'm
people
just
can
actually
look up on the Scout website. It's called
yeah,
Trakovi, the Slav with no remorse.
yeah, go to
Trakovi spelled
Scout.
Trakovi, I think.
Correct. Yeah, that is it. So yeah, go to scoutcomics.com and then buy direct through them. And then you could also order at your local comic shop. They can, definitely bring it in because it comes through Diamond or Lunar distributors.
And then when's the sitter come out? And when's all that is that in pre-sales now?
No, so okay, so I'm gonna do a Kickstarter. So I'm doing it with lesser known comics. So I think they're out of LA, and so we're going to be doing a Kickstarter together, and we have it scheduled for April of next year. And
Okay.
so what I'll do is I think probably like in February I'll put up the preview page, the pre-launch page, just start building up some followers through there, and I'll just start plugging away
Hit
on
me
that.
up whenever you go live in April next year, and I'll bring you back on
Yeah.
again, and we'll
Oh
talk
yeah,
more.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'll send you Van's copy. You can read it, and then yeah,
Awesome.
and actually
Thanks.
I'm getting Andrea Molinari to edit that for me. Um,
Oh,
my
badass.
yeah, so I contacted him, right? Because I wasn't sure I just asked like, hey, do you do any editing outside of Scout? He goes, yeah, of course, right? And so I got him lined up. So I'm gonna hire him to do it. I'm really excited just because I just he was so good to work with. And I'm just a big fan of his own series, The Shepherd, which is
Yeah.
it's just a great series. It's just a heartbreaker of a series. And I just find like more people need to like hop on that book.
Yeah. I will say, like, yeah, with my experience with Scout, the editor, I
Mhm.
had both David Byrne and Charlie Stickney as
Okay.
helpers and editors and
Mhm.
sort of mentors whenever I was with
Mhm.
Scout for It Eats What Feeds It. And
Mhm.
they are both like successful on their own as
Mhm.
independent creators. And on Andre Molinari, the same way, to where it's like the
Mhm.
people that they have working with, even though it's just like anything else, to where they're cycling in and out, going from
Mhm.
different thing to different thing. The people in this space are really knowledgeable in this space. I feel like that was probably the same
Yeah.
with almost any publisher that you can get on, and that is one of the benefits of publishers. Is
Yeah.
there are a lot of benefits. Like, I think the only downside is just that people think that you can, like, they are just the golden ticket to money, and it's like they're not that.
No.
They're no golden ticket, but they are a great stepping stone in a
Yeah.
career. And I'll end on
It
that
is.
note.
Yeah.
And thanks a lot for coming on. We're
Thank
over
you.
an hour, man.
Oh, dude, honestly, honestly, this is so weird just to be, because I remember just like reading your book just in our den, right? It eats what feeds it. I'm like, Jesus, right? It was just like, it's like, and it's funny. I remember I ordered like a bunch of the variant covers, and I was just like, I got so obsessed with this series, right? And then,
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
heart.
Thank you.
So it's really it's funny how just things kind of come full circle in a weird way. It's like, a couple years ago, here I'm idolizing your book, and now here I am like talking to you, right? It's like,
That's awesome. That yeah, that
it's
we're
yeah.
that's what I try to stress in a lot of these interviews, that especially
Mhm.
very new creators that come on, is like, you're in the game now, man. Like,
Mhm.
when I made
Mm.
It Eats What Feeds It, I was nobody.
Yeah.
And it's like, but once I was in, I was in. And now you're like
Mhm.
in this circle, and you start to realize it's just like making music or being a comedian. It's like you did your open mic, people
Mhm.
laughed. You're in the game now. Like, if you
One
show
book,
up and do
just
another open micer,
yeah,
you're in.
yeah,
It's just like,
just
and just keep
yeah.
going.
Get one book out. Just get one book out.
One.
If if
That's it.
if it's even if it's self-published, whatever, there are ways you can crowdfund that. Just get one, and then
Yeah,
after that, you'll know. It's funny. It's like I was always told, I was like, you'll know after the first one if this is what you want to do, right?
for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So that's really best advice I can give. Just knock one out. Worry about the rest later.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thanks a lot,
Okay, man.
man. And till
Thanks a
next
lot.
time. And can you send me all the links to your social medias and stuff, and I'll put them in the description. And I'll
Yeah.
probably launch this on Thursday or next Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe if you want to do next week, because next Wednesday issue 3 comes out.
All right, then yeah, I'll do it next Tuesday, and I'll let people know whenever I launch it that uh
Yeah.
issue 3's out.
Appreciate that. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.